This is a stunt by a guy who constantly does stunts to get his name out there, to grow his platform. So a couple months ago, there was that story that went around about Carl Lentz, that he was seen at like this broadcasters event, like this Christian broadcast event. And people were saying like, maybe he's coming back. And I made a video. I think he's on the comeback trail. And everyone was like, I don't know if that's what's going on. Well, he's hired. He's hired. He decided to go to work for a pretty familiar person to some of you guys. So Carl Lentz, in first staff position since Hillsong, joins Transformation Church in Tulsa. We gladly welcome Carl Lentz to our Transformation Church staff, helping TC with strategy as we continue to move forward in our vast vision, said one pastor of the predominantly Black megachurch. So Carl Lentz, the ousted pastor of Hillsong, New York City, has landed on staff at Transformation Church, a predominantly Black non-denominational megachurch in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that is led by pastor, author, and popular YouTuber Michael Todd. There was a story that went around a while ago about how Carl Lentz was seen at the church, and people were like, is this a sign of things to come? Well, apparently so. So Michael Todd has gotten himself into trouble time and time again with different things that he's said, dangerous theological positions, words that, some people are like, well, you're just not giving him the benefit of the doubt. But I mean, like, some of the language that he uses to describe different things is so confusing. And he preaches like for 2 hours, and you're wondering where the heck he's going. I remember a couple, like a year ago, maybe a couple years ago, you remember like the spitting thing, where I think it was even his brother. Someone came out on stage and he like spat in like in a gross way. I actually, you could go back there, that video somewhere on my channel, and I had my son react to it. Like my oldest reacted to like the spitting, and he put it on his face, and it's just, he does whatever he can to like get a reaction. I think that's fair. I think he's well beyond like being able to evaluate him in good charity and just be like, hey, I disagree with, what he said, but he preaches the gospel. Nope, this guy's super dangerous. He's a bad pastor. He teaches wrongly frequently. He teaches dangerous theology. He says things about Jesus that make you scratch your head. And now he's having Carl Lentz come in, and he's going to be a strategy guy. So there's talk about people like, obviously people are upset about this. Carl Lentz messed up real bad, cheated on his wife, was living basically a completely double life, telling a woman that he wasn't even himself. Okay. So he was living a double life, hanging out with Justin Bieber. We all remember some of the things that Joe Rogan said about him. Like he is not qualified to be a pastor. And now he's on staff, but he's not a pastor, so don't get mad. So we gladly welcome Carl Lentz to our transformation staff, helping TC with strategy as we continue to move forward in our vast vision. Tammy McQuarters, the church's executive pastor of operations, told Religion News Service in an email Monday. A source close to Lentz also confirmed to RNS that Lentz and his family had relocated to Tulsa and were attending Transformation Church, though the source did not confirm Lentz was on staff at the church. Lentz, according to the source, has launched a consulting and coaching business. Don't they always do that? Mark Driscoll did the same thing until he planted his church. We're gonna do that. Perry Noble did it too. Trying to think of other fallen pastors. I'm sure this is a common thing to fall back on. But according to sources, launched a consulting and coaching business, and his clients include churches. Tulsa was the right place for Lentz's family to continue to heal and move forward, said the source. Now, a couple things with this. Everyone has a place in a church, okay? Like that's not what's being talked about here. Like I know that there are going to be people who are immediately like, he said he was sorry, he apologized, he belongs in a church. He should be able to go to church. No one's arguing about that. If he went to this church just to go to the church, I think he should find a different church. I think he should find a good church. But like if he was just like, oh, we're going to go to this church, okay. But he's on staff. And he's on staff for strategy. And once again, I think that words like that, they just don't want to call him pastor because they don't probably want the all the heat that they would get for hiring him as a pastor. So that's just me. That's just my thought on it. That they give him the role of strategy advisor or whatever to get behind or away from that thing. But here's the thing: Carl Lentz failed. And he failed dramatically, and he failed hard. Now, many pastors have failed, and some of them have been restored to ministry, and there are good times to be restored to or there are good reasons to be restored to ministry. If you're repentant, if there's ongoing change over a prolonged amount of time, and depending on the hurt and devastation that you left when you failed, I think that those would be all things to consider on whether a pastor should be allowed back into ministry once they have had some kind of moral failure in their life. But here's the thing: Carl Lentz failed in almost every single way that you can. He failed morally. He sinned against his wife, against his church. He failed biblically with the model that they had at that church. It was unbiblical. The way that they let their pastor just be a celebrity and not interact with the sheep at all, and to just go and be, live a party lifestyle. Like, yes, those are like practical things of just someone living their life and dangerous things for them to be doing. But also those are theological things. That's your ecclesiology of you view your pastor as being separate from your church, and that he gets to go and just do whatever he wants, and he doesn't have to interact with your church. He's just the speaker on Sunday. Like, Carl Lentz failed biblically, like not just morally, but biblically on what it means to be a pastor at all. And then Carl Lentz failed strategically. There's a documentary about how much devastation him and Brian Houston left at Hillsong, and specifically with the New York campus, with all the volunteers that were devastated by their church, by the leadership of Carl Lentz, by the strategy of Carl Lentz, and the hurt that he caused them in their life. The abuse, the spiritual abuse that they suffered as volunteers. Like there's not just one. Like there are many of these volunteers who were just used and abused by Hillsong New York under the leadership of Carl Lentz. He is not a strategist. Getting people in the door doesn't make you a strategist. Even like we know this in the business world, getting people to click isn't everything about a strategy. Getting them to stay, getting them to grow, getting them, as far as business goes, to buy your product. That's what makes someone a good strategist. They didn't buy the product at Hillsong. The product was very flawed, by the way, but they didn't buy the product. They came in, they saw, they left. It was a rotating door. So if you want Carl Lentz to be your strategist, I think you have some serious problems, even like, yes, morally, yes, biblically, but also just with common sense of like, this guy is not the person you want giving you the strategy of how to grow your church or how to do your church properly or how to deal with people. He doesn't know how to deal with people. He was in the green room. He was off hanging out with Justin Bieber. Like, what is... This is a stunt by a guy who constantly does stunts to get his name out there, to grow his platform. And there's a reason why I think I've only made one video about him, and it was a simple just reacting to that gross spitting thing that was somewhat funny for me and my little son to do together. But like, I don't talk about this guy because I don't think he's worth talking about. He is a YouTuber that got a job as a pastor, and he's just doing all kinds of stunts to get people to click. And the latest stunt is hiring Carl Lentz as your strategist. It's not going to work. It's going to hurt people. You just wait. It's going to hurt people. 2.5 years, guys. Carl Lentz was fired on November 4th, 2020 by Brian Houston. Brian Houston fired him. That's how bad it was that you had Brian Houston being like, no, you're fired. Like, and that was 2.5 years ago. If you want to talk about healing, yes, he needs to, have a church, be at a church. Everyone belongs to a church. Like, you can find belonging in a church. Just because you failed miserably doesn't mean that you're too far gone as a Christian. But as a leader, as a pastor, very different. Very different. The hurt that this man caused on hundreds, if not thousands, is devastating. The hurt that he had on his family. The hurt that he probably experienced within his own soul. Like, these things don't just go away in 2.5 years. Prolonged amount of time of repentance. Not, hey, 2.5 years have passed. People aren't caring as much. Oh, and by the way, we have another documentary coming out. Variety reports. Yeah, Variety. Fired Hillsong pastor Carl Lentz to give first interview in new FX docuseries, Secrets of Hillsong. So because of the popularity of the Hillsong and Megachurch Exposed, we're now having Carl Lentz and his wife come and give his side of the story. Does anyone see the strategy here? I'm the victim. That's what's going to be said in this documentary. And, I found this church and we're working on things and we're trying to help people and I've overcome so much. That's what the story is going to be. And they'll have the hero shot of him and Mike Todd, probably not on stage. I don't expect, I don't know, maybe I would, I shouldn't put it past some people to do certain things, but I would be very surprised to see him back on stage preaching anytime soon. But to hire him on at the church, I think is the first step. Oh yeah? Well, get your own YouTube then. Oh, hey, you made it all the way through the video. That's actually kind of shocking. Hey, if you did, that means that you probably like it. So might as well hit the like button, right? Also, you can go over here and click on a video. I don't know what it is, but YouTube will be like, hey, you should watch this. And maybe they know. Maybe the algorithm is right. Maybe AI knows everything. Maybe it's taking over the world. I think it's taking over the world.